Most people have a box of spaghetti sitting in their pantry right now, and most of those people assume it's a reasonable thing to eat. It's pasta. It's cheap. It fills you up. But the actual problem with the spaghetti most Americans buy isn't that the brand is cutting corners with cheap flour, though plenty of them are. It's what that noodle does to your blood sugar every single time you eat it, regardless of the brand. And the fix that every other video in this space lands on, buy a fancier box of wheat pasta, doesn't touch that problem at all. That is what this video is about. You have probably seen videos breaking down which spaghetti brands are real pasta and which ones are cutting corners with cheap flour. Those videos are worth watching, but they all end the same way. Buy a fancier box of wheat pasta, and if you scroll through the comments on any of those videos, you'll find the same questions sitting there unanswered. People asking about blood sugar, about insulin, about whether pasta itself is the problem, not just the brand. Nobody answers that. So that is where this video picks up. We are going to go through why the spaghetti most Americans buy is a poor nutritional choice, not just an authenticity problem. And then we are going to cover 4 Asian noodle alternatives that are genuinely worth swapping in. One of them is so close to 0 carbs that it barely registers as a starch at all. One of them has more protein than most people expect from a noodle. And one of them, I want to be upfront about this, is not automatically a health upgrade over spaghetti, and it is probably the one you assume is the safest choice. Let's start with the spaghetti problem, because it is bigger than the label. Flip a box of standard American spaghetti, ronzoni, Muller's, Great Value, Cremette, take your pick, and the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. Not semolina, not durum wheat semolina, enriched wheat flour, which is common wheat that has been milled down, stripped of most of its natural fiber and nutrients, and then had synthetic B vitamins and iron added back in to meet federal minimum requirements. The word enriched on a food label does not mean the food is nutritious. It means the original nutrition was removed and a fraction of it was put back synthetically. The FDA has what amounts to a loophole here. Under Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, a pasta brand can print "made with semolina" on the front of a box, even when semolina is not the primary ingredient. There is no required percentage. So a box can be 90% cheap enriched flour, have a small amount of semolina mixed in, and still carry that language on the label. Most people never flip the box, and the brands know that. Ronzoni is the most recognized pasta brand in America, the box your grandmother probably bought without a second thought. But flip it over and the first ingredient is enriched wheat flour, not semolina. What you're actually paying for at this point isn't the product, it's the memory of the name. Decades of brand recognition, standing in for a formula that quietly changed underneath it. Here's a 3-second test you can run on any box before you buy it. First, read the first ingredient. If it says enriched wheat flour, enriched farina, or any version of that phrase, stop. The decision is already made. Second, check the protein line. A real 100-gram serving of durum semolina pasta should show at least 12 grams of protein, ideally 13 or 14. Anything under 10 is a red flag because durum wheat naturally runs 13% protein or higher, and that protein is what builds the gluten scaffolding that keeps a noodle from falling apart in the pot. Third, if you actually cook it, real semolina pasta needs 10 to 12 minutes to cook through. If the box says 5 minutes, that's not a shortcut, that's a tell. A noodle that thin and that fast cooking never had the gluten structure to need more time. None of this is a guess. It's checkable in about 30 seconds with a box you already own. The physical result is a noodle with almost no structural integrity. It is extruded through Teflon dies at high speed, dried in a few hours rather than the 10 to 50 hours that slower process pasta uses, and it comes out with a perfectly smooth surface. That smooth surface is part of why the noodles fuse together in the colander. There is no texture, no irregularity for the strands to release against so they bind. That is not a cooking mistake. That is a manufacturing outcome. But here is where the story that those other videos tell runs out of road. Even if you swap to a high-quality semolina pasta, De Cecco, Rumo, a slow-dried artisan brand, you are still eating refined wheat. And refined wheat, regardless of how authentically it was made, still behaves like refined wheat in your body. The glycemic load is actually a more accurate predictor of your blood sugar response than the glycemic index alone, because it accounts for both the GI of the food and the amount of carbohydrates in a serving. Regular spaghetti has a glycemic load of around 21, which puts it in the high range, meaning it is likely to cause a meaningful spike in blood sugar levels. Cook it past al dente, which most people do, and that number climbs further. Cooking pasta or noodles to a firm, al dente texture rather than soft can lower the glycemic index by around 10 to 15 points because the firm center retains ungelatinized starch granules that your enzymes break down more slowly. Boil it soft, and you lose that buffer entirely. Wheat-based noodles like spaghetti score around 42 to 49 on the glycemic index, and the reason they are not higher is that wheat gluten forms a protein network that slows starch digestion, something that refined rice-based noodles actually lack. So the gluten structure in wheat pasta is doing some metabolic work for you, which means the moment you move away from wheat, you cannot just grab any Asian noodle off the shelf and assume you have made a healthier choice. Some of them are a lateral move. Some are a genuine step up. And one of them is in a completely different category from everything else. Here are the 4 worth knowing about. The first one is 100% buckwheat soba. Soba is a Japanese noodle, thin and slightly earthy, and it has been eaten in Japan for centuries. The word soba just means buckwheat in Japanese, but here is the catch that matters when you are standing in the grocery store aisle. Most soba sold in the United States is not 100% buckwheat. Many commercial products mix buckwheat with wheat flour to improve texture and reduce cost, which increases both the carbohydrate content and the glycemic impact. The true low glycemic index benefits come specifically from pure buckwheat varieties, so you have to read the label. If the first ingredient is wheat flour and buckwheat is second, you are buying a wheat noodle with buckwheat branding. What you want is a package where buckwheat flour is the only ingredient, sometimes labeled jawari soba, which means 100% buckwheat in Japanese. 2 widely available options that meet that bar are Shirakiku Zaru soba noodles and Eden Foods 100% buckwheat soba. Both are sold at most major grocery chains and on Amazon, but check the ingredient panel yourself before buying, since formulations can change. When you get the real thing, the nutritional profile is genuinely different from spaghetti. Buckwheat noodles are digested more slowly than refined wheat products, which leads to reduced starch breakdown and more consistent post-meal glucose responses. Resistant starch and antioxidant peptides in buckwheat similarly support glycemic control. Buckwheat contains rutin, an antioxidant flavonoid that may help strengthen blood vessels and reduce cholesterol oxidation, and studies suggest that regular intake of buckwheat products can improve lipid profiles and lower LDL cholesterol. Each serving of pure buckwheat soba offers around 5 grams of protein and all essential amino acids, including lysine, which is often limited in grains, making it a valuable addition to vegetarian and vegan diets. Despite its name, buckwheat is not related to wheat and does not contain gluten. Gluten is formed from proteins that are absent in buckwheat, which makes 100% buckwheat soba an ideal option for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. And soba noodles are naturally low in sodium because, unlike wheat noodles or bread, no salt is needed to form the soba dough. In terms of taste, 100% buckwheat soba has a nutty, slightly mineral flavor that is different from pasta, but works really well in cold noodle dishes, sesame-based sauces, and light broths. It is not a one-to-one pasta substitute in every dish, but it earns its place as an actual food with actual flavor, not just a vehicle for sauce. The second noodle is glass noodles, also called cellophane noodles or bean thread noodles. These are the translucent, slippery noodles you see in dishes like japchae, pad woon sen, or Vietnamese spring rolls. Glass noodles get their translucent appearance from purified starch, and the most common base is mung bean starch, though sweet potato, potato, and tapioca versions are also widely sold. The ingredient list is typically just starch and water, which means you are getting a clean, simple food with no additives. Here is why they matter for blood sugar. Glass noodles made from mung bean starch are one of the better noodle options for blood sugar management, with a glycemic index of approximately 26. They are made from mung bean starch, which is high in resistant starch and amylose. That said, portion control still matters since they are carbohydrate dense by weight. A glycemic index of around 26 is notably lower than standard spaghetti, and it is lower than most other noodles in this category. Versus white rice noodles, the calorie count is similar, but mung bean glass noodles have a dramatically lower glycemic index. The thing to watch out for here is the label. Again, several mung bean glass noodles have low tested values, but products made from other starches may behave differently. Sweet potato starch glass noodles, for example, have a higher glycemic index than mung bean versions. They look almost identical in the package. The only way to know which one you are buying is to check the ingredient list. Mung bean starch, or green bean starch, is what you want at the top. Dynasty Siphon Bean Threads is a widely stocked mung bean option you'll find at most major grocery chains and on Amazon. Again, confirm the label yourself, since recipes can change. Glass noodles have almost no flavor on their own, which is actually a feature. They absorb whatever sauce or broth they are cooked in completely, so they work in stir-fries, soups, and salads without fighting the other flavors in the dish. Their health value depends heavily on what you pair them with, so add protein such as chicken, tofu, shrimp, or egg, and vegetables, and the meal becomes genuinely balanced. The noodle alone is not the whole story. The third noodle is where it gets interesting, and it is also the one that requires the most honest framing: shirataki noodles. Shirataki noodles consist of a type of starch known as glucomannan, and the body does not digest this starch, making shirataki noodles very low in calories and carbohydrates. When people say these noodles are 0 calorie, that is essentially accurate. The carbohydrates in them are non-digestible fiber, not starch that your body converts to glucose. They are carb-free, making them an extremely low glycemic food. They are made from glucomannan, a type of fiber that comes from the root of the konjac plant, which grows in Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. They have been part of Japanese cuisine for centuries, and the konjac plant has been part of traditional Eastern medicine for thousands of years. The mechanism behind how they work is worth understanding. The glucomannan fiber in shirataki noodles is water-soluble, and it turns into a gel when it mixes with stomach fluids. That gel coats the intestines as it moves slowly through the digestive tract, which means you feel full longer. Shirataki noodles can delay stomach emptying, which may help prevent blood sugar spikes after meals. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care showed that people who ate a test food enriched with konjac glucomannan fiber had lower fasting blood sugars than those who ate a food with a comparable amount of wheat fiber. Beyond blood sugar, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that taking around 3 grams of glucomannan fiber each day caused a 10% reduction in LDL cholesterol, and a study published in Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice showed that eating glucomannan fiber reduced levels of ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates hunger. 2 of the most widely available brands are Miracle Noodle and House Foods. Both are sold in the refrigerated section of most major grocery chains, as well as on Amazon. Now, the honest part, shirataki noodles have a texture that takes some getting used to. They come packaged in water and have a slightly rubbery, gelatinous feel that is nothing like pasta. You need to rinse them very well, dry toast them in a hot pan for a few minutes to drive off excess moisture, and then cook them in your sauce. Skip that step and they taste like wet rubber, do it right, and they become a surprisingly usable vehicle for bold flavors, miso, sesame, chili oil, garlic. They are not trying to be pasta. The moment you stop expecting them to taste like pasta, they become a lot more useful. One thing worth knowing, because glucomannan fiber lowers low blood sugar, people who take insulin or other diabetes medications may develop low blood sugar if they eat these regularly, so check with your doctor if that applies to you. And eating a large amount of this fiber at once can cause bloating, gas, or digestive discomfort, so start with a smaller portion if you are new to them. The fourth noodle is the one I said up front that everyone assumes is the healthiest swap, and it is the one that actually requires the most caution. That is plain udon, or plain white rice vermicelli. And the reason I am grouping these together is that they share the same core problem. They are made from refined starch, with very little else going on. Udon is a thick Japanese wheat noodle. It is made from wheat flour, water, and salt. No semolina, no whole grain, no additional nutrients. Asian wheat noodles like udon use different flour, alkaline salts, and manufacturing methods, so pasta glycemic values should not be automatically transferred to them. Tested udon products have glycemic index values ranging from approximately 38 to 62, which is a wide range, and the higher end of that puts udon well above where spaghetti sits. White rice vermicelli is in a similar position. It is refined rice starch, and rice noodles typically have a glycemic index of 53 to 61, and the difference from wheat noodles comes from the fact that wheat gluten forms a protein network that slows starch digestion, something rice noodles lack. So, if you swap from a box of ronzoni to plain udon or white rice vermicelli, you have not made a health upgrade. You have made a lateral move within the refined starch category, and in some cases you have actually moved to a higher glycemic index food. The swap people assume is the obvious healthy choice is, nutritionally, the weakest one on this list. Quick gut check before we keep going. Drop a comment right now if udon or rice vermicelli was the one you assumed was the healthiest swap on this list. I want to see how common that assumption actually is, because it tells me what to cover next. That does not mean udon and rice vermicelli are foods to avoid. They are culturally important, they taste good, and they work beautifully in specific dishes. But if your goal is to actually change what your blood sugar does after dinner, these two are not the answer. The other three are. To pull this together, the problem with standard American spaghetti is not just that the brands are cutting corners with cheap flour. It is that even when the pasta is made correctly from semolina, it is still a refined wheat product that spikes blood sugar, and the buy a better brand solution that every other video in this space offers does not actually address that. The real move is to change the category. 100% buckwheat soba gives you a lower glycemic index, real protein with all 9 essential amino acids, antioxidants from rutin, and no gluten, but only if you buy the version where buckwheat is the only ingredient on the label. Glass noodles made from mung bean starch give you one of the lowest glycemic indexes of any starchy food. They are naturally gluten-free, and they disappear into whatever you cook them with. Shirataki noodles are in a class by themselves, essentially zero digestible carbohydrates, with clinical evidence behind the glucomannan fiber for blood sugar, cholesterol, and satiety, but they require a specific cooking technique and some patience with the texture. And plain udon and white rice vermicelli, despite being Asian noodles, are not a health upgrade from spaghetti, and treating them like they are is the most common mistake people make when they try to eat better. The next time you are in the grocery store, flip the package. For soba, you want buckwheat flour as the only ingredient. Shirakiku, Zaru, soba noodles, and Eden Foods both qualify. For glass noodles, you want mung bean starch at the top. Dynasty siphon bean threads is the easiest one to find. For shirataki, any brand works. The glucomannan content is consistent. Miracle Noodle and House Foods are the two most widely stocked. And for udon and rice vermicelli, Enjoy them for what they are, just do not confuse them for a health food, and if you still want a rice noodle specifically, Annie Chun's My Fun Brown Rice Noodles is a better pick within that category than plain white rice vermicelli. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, where we actually go through the mechanism, not just the ranking, there is a lot more of this on the channel. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 4 noodles you have actually tried, or which one you want to try first, because I read those and it genuinely shapes what we cover next. If you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Thank you so much for watching. We greatly appreciate your support and the time you spend with us on each video. See you next time.